The central threat of our times is the Chinese Communist Party and a cover-up of the Wuhan coronavirus. That and more on today's China News headlines. This is China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This week's China News headlines. First up, the Wuhan coronavirus. We're not going to tell you what the latest numbers are because the situation is moving so quickly, by the time you watch this video, they will be different. But we can tell you more about the cover-up. Remember those 8 people who were detained by police for spreading rumors about the coronavirus back in December? Turns out they were all doctors. The Beijing Youth Daily interviewed the original doctor who spread the so-called rumor. Turns out the doctor had warned a WeChat group of former medical school classmates about 7 patients from a local wet market who were exhibiting symptoms that he initially thought was SARS. After screenshots from the private group leaked on social media, the doctor was summoned to a police station and forced to confess his error and pledge not to repeat it. So were the other doctors in the group chat, apparently. According to the Beijing Youth Daily, the doctor is now himself in an isolation ward after he fell ill while treating patients. As you can imagine, this news has contributed to the ongoing backlash against Chinese officials for covering up news about the virus. People are so unhappy that even the Supreme People's Court has published an article about how the police were wrong for detaining the doctor. The good news is, the Communist Party has clearly learned their lesson about the need for greater openness in this time of crisis, which is why the party has ordered the article about the doctor to be deleted from the internet. Nothing to see here, folks. Okay, so maybe propaganda can't defeat the new coronavirus. But you know what can? Drones. Specifically drones that yell at you.
老奶奶，别看了，这是咱们村的无人机呀！你不戴口罩就不要出去，不要乱跑，记得赶紧回家，回家洗洗手，对吧？注意一下卫生，对吧？咱们村这么多人都说你都说不住，非得派无人机过来飞你。
My favorite state-run media, the Global Times, published this compilation of drones in China policing people and telling them to wear masks or go back home. Clearly, the best way to keep people healthy is to scare the bejesus out of them and then post that footage on China's version of TikTok.
小朋友，现在是非常时期，别在外面溜达，口罩也没戴，赶快往家走。现在这冠状病毒多严重啊，快跑！别再出来了啊，在家好好待着，为社会做贡献。
That little girl just got yelled at by a drone. She's never leaving the house again. In non-coronavirus news, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo had some pretty harsh words for China.
The Chinese Communist Party presents the central threat of our times.
Central threat? Personally, I feel it's that second helping of pancakes. Sure, it tastes great, but don't expect your day to be productive anymore. And too much of it will probably give you a heart attack. But Pompeo has reasons for singling out the Chinese Communist Party. The chairman of Harvard's chemistry department, Charles Lieber, was arrested on charges of lying about getting millions of dollars in Chinese funding. He's a pioneer in the field of nanotechnology. That's something the Chinese Communist Party is extremely interested in. And I know mostly about through the Metal Gear video game series.
The nanomachines inside soldiers' bodies adapt to different conditions, promoting the release of neurotransmitters, hormones, and stimulants, giving them an edge in battle.
The U.S. was funding Lieber's research with $15 million. At the same time, he was part of China's 1,000 Talents plan. As part of that, a Chinese tech university gave him $1.5 million to set up a research lab in China. The school also agreed to pay him a $50,000 monthly salary and offered about $150,000 in annual living expenses for significant periods from 2012 to 2017. And as a side note, that Chinese tech university was located in Wuhan. So, lucky for him, now that he's been arrested in the US, he won't have to go back to Wuhan, where the coronavirus has been spreading. There were 2 other people charged along with Professor Charles Lieber. One is Yang Qingye, a Chinese robotics researcher at Boston University. She had concealed that she was also in the Chinese army. The other is Zhao Congzheng. He's a cancer researcher who was caught traveling to China with 21 vials of biological samples. There's also been a string of Chinese students getting caught spying at the Key West Navy base. Pretty freaky stuff. There's also been an increase in trademark theft committed by Chinese factories. According to China Law Blog, Chinese factories are stealing intellectual property much faster than even a year ago. It comes as they fear U.S. companies will move their manufacturing out of China because the trade war has made China production more expensive. And despite warnings from the U.S., the UK has given the go-ahead to Chinese telecom giant Huawei to build part of its 5G network. I believe we have footage of the UK's Prime Minister on this issue.
Tell me why. Ain't nothing but a heartache. Tell me why. Ain't nothing but a mistake. I never want to hear you say, but I want it Huawei.
Huawei has connections to the Chinese military. This makes the entire UK telecom system vulnerable, and that also puts the US system at risk by proxy, as well as jeopardizing the entire Five Eyes. That's a security alliance between the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. So the UK's decision is very, very stupid. Do they not get China Uncensored in the UK? And the European Union is also rather stupid about the whole thing. The European Commission has set new guidelines that basically leave the decision to use or ban Huawei up to individual countries. Letting countries make their own decisions is not a problem per se, but it's a concern in this case because the Chinese regime has been working to pick apart the EU country by country through investment deals, which often include Huawei deals. China is able to buy off European countries. Greece is a great example. After heavy Chinese investment in its struggling economy, Greece blocked the EU from criticizing China's human rights record. Now, China is using Huawei as a wedge issue across Europe. Germany is especially at risk. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has favored a Huawei deal. You know, it's nice to know that despite Brexit, Boris and Angela still have one thing in common. Merkel is pushing for Huawei even against the recommendations of her own intelligence agencies. In other words,
The Chinese Communist Party presents the central threat of our times.
And that does it for this week's China News Headlines. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you'll get notified when new episodes come out. And as I've mentioned before, YouTube often demonetizes episodes like this because they're too controversial. We would have been run out of business years ago if it weren't for fan support through the crowdfunding website Patreon. So, as a thank you to these fans, I answer their questions at the end of some of my episodes. Today's question comes from Kevin Oberdick. How did the KMT party morph into a pro-unification party? Is Chiang Kai-shek rolling over in his grave? Or what am I missing? Very interesting question. So the KMT party was the party of the Republic of China. They were the government of China before the Chinese Communist Party won the Chinese Civil War and the KMT retreated to Taiwan. Today, Taiwan is a multi-party democracy, so the KMT is just one of many parties. But it is known as generally a more pro-Beijing party. So, how did the mortal enemy of the CCP have such a drastic turnaround? Well, that's a pretty clear example of just how successful the Chinese Communist Party is at infiltrating groups and subverting them. Money is a big part of it. The KMT argues that Taiwan needs closer economic ties to China for the economy. And maybe KMT politicians get some money for that view along the way. There are claims that China spent $200 million in the last election to support the KMT candidate. But also keep in mind, there's a spectrum to the current KMT. No prominent KMT politician is arguing for a one country, two systems arrangement like they have in Hong Kong. At least not anymore. Some, as I've said, genuinely believe the Taiwanese economy requires close dealing with the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, the best way to make money is to work with communists. We all know that. Others still have this sort of old-timey nationalistic feeling that Taiwan and China should unify in some way. So it would be a little unfair to say that every KMT member is pro-communist. Is the former head of the KMT, Chiang Kai-shek, who fought Mao, rolling over in his grave? Well, I can't say for sure. Grave robbery is a crime, and I don't encourage people to commit crimes. Well, except thought crimes. Thanks for your question. And thank you for watching and supporting China Uncensored. If you're not a patron yet, join our China Uncensored 50 Cent Army. Go to patreon.com/China Uncensored and contribute. The link is below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.